Hi, and welcome to Effective's Top 10 Tips podcast. Each episode is a quick roundup of practical, easy to implement tips on a wide range of management and personal development themes. As always, full show notes for this episode, including a handy summary of each tip, are available on our website. Just see the episode notes for this and many other useful links. We also offer workshops and coaching on all topics covered in this podcast series. Today's episode is on management roles and responsibilities. Tip number 1, managing performance. Any manager has to look after the performance of 4 particular units that are their responsibility. You may not have responsibility for all 4 of these units, but you will have responsibility for at least some of them. So here are the 4 units. The first is a large unit such as marketing department or finance department. The second level would be managing teams within that unit. At the third level, you're responsible for the performance of the individuals within each of those teams. And the fourth level is managing your own performance. It's going to be pretty difficult for you to be effective as a manager in the other 3 areas, unit, team and individual, if you're not good at managing yourself. Tip number 2, managing relationships. This is about managing relationships rather than managing people. Sometimes as a manager, we tend to think of this being essentially a vertical relationship, managing those who hierarchically are at a level below. But you also have to have the responsibility for 3 other types of relationship. Those above you, your manager, those within the organisation who work alongside you, your peers and colleagues, and your external relationships, such as those with partners, stakeholders and customers. Generally speaking, under the right conditions, people can manage themselves. A manager's 2 responsibilities to their staff are to give clear direction and adequate resources. What seems most important is the relationship a manager has with his or her staff. So it's not about managing people, it's about managing the way you work with them. Tip number 3, managing resources. A resource is something that any individual or team need in order to complete the task. Money, it isn't a resource. It's the most usual and convenient way of acquiring the resources you need. So think of resources rather than thinking of money. The classic resources are people, time, materials and equipment, space and accommodation, information, systems and procedures. The manager's role is to identify the necessary resources and make them available. Added to this is the issue of personal resourcefulness, your own internal resources such as stamina and personal health. Tip number 4, managing problems. Some managers would say that is essentially their job. It is exactly managing problems. They come into work, perhaps have a provisional to-do list, then there's a knock on the door or the phone rings or that a message pops up on the screen and off they go. It's a problem and they're required to solve it. If that's the case for you, then you need key skills in that area, including things like being able to identify a problem, analyse and evaluate it, and end up making key decisions and providing effective solutions. Tip number 5, managing yourself. There are a whole host of things that could be included in managing yourself. So many, in fact, that they will be covered in a separate podcast called Managing Yourself. Tip number 6, managing the context. Most managers will have the roles already referred to, but how they do them often depends on the next tips, the first of which is context, which is the world in which we operate, that shapes ourselves and our organisation. That's the context. There's an internal context driven by the organisation and an external one driven by the wider environment, the economic, legal, technical, social and political contexts. By and large, the manager will be reactive to the external context, but may have an opportunity to shape the internal context. Tip number 7, managing the culture. Culture is defined usually as the way we do things around here, and this will be a combination of formal and informal, official and official, norms, routines, processes, relationships and behaviours. There are 4 classic components of any culture: the structure, the processes, the behaviours and attitude. Together they determine the way we do things around here. So a good manager will be aware of the culture of the unit or units they manage and work to install and embed a culture that works best for that unit and the organisation. Tip number 8. Managing change. There are 2 approaches to managing change: reactive and proactive. Most managers think first of their reactive role, having to respond to a change initiated from above or from the outside world. But managers are also expected to have a proactive approach to change, to regularly review their management area, their units, and consider how they may be changed for the better. Tip number 9. Not to challenge is to condone. Typically, a manager will have issues within their team or unit, particularly ones of poor performance or poor behaviour, and the manager is expected to address such issues. If they don't, then in effect they are condoning the performance or behaviour, and ultimately the spotlight of poor performance will fall on the manager rather than those who are performing or behaving badly. Tip number 10. Don't marginalise management. Many managers will have started their career as a technical or specialist expert with no thought of managing. Yet for whatever reason, they become managers and may still be required to fulfil some of their specialist role. If this happens, beware of marginalising management. It can be too easy to concentrate on the specialist element which you know you can do well and enjoy, especially if you find management by comparison more difficult and less enjoyable. So, that's it for this episode. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed the podcast, please share it or leave us a review. Remember, you can find full show notes on our website, plus a growing library of free resources which you can easily search by theme to find content that's relevant for you. We also offer workshops and coaching on a wide range of topics. Links to all of these resources are in the episode notes. Thank you.